Two twin girls live alone, while their millionaire father works non-stop. One night, he receives a distressed phone call. "Dad, our legs hurt. Our stepmother left in the car and left us to fend for ourselves without any food." Terrified, he runs home without imagining what he will find. Upon opening the door, he discovers a truth that no prepared father could bear. Before listening to this incredible story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting tales. In a penthouse apartment in an upscale neighborhood of the capital, two 7-year-old twin girls wake up every day at 5:30 in the morning, long before sunrise. Helena and Olivia Muller share more than just their appearance. They share the responsibility of surviving together in a home where adult presence is only physical, never emotional. The alarm clock rings softly, and Helena, the more practical of the two, carefully silences it so as not to wake the adults. They look at each other in silence and begin the routine they already know by heart. They make their beds, wash their faces, comb each other's hair, and put on the navy blue and white uniform of the traditional school they attend. "We have to be quicker today," Helena whispers, glancing at the wall clock. "Dad said he's leaving early." Olivia, the dreamer, transforms her sister's hairstyle into a playful beauty salon experience. "Imagine we're princesses who need to get ready for a big royal party," she says, trying to bring a little fantasy to their rigid routine. In the spacious and impeccably decorated kitchen, the twins prepare breakfast with the skill of little adults. Helena makes toast and cuts fruit, while Olivia sets the table and packs lunches for school. They do everything with the concentration of those who know they can't afford to make a mistake. The noise of the blender is muffled by a cloth that Helena wraps around it. They learned the hard way that their stepmother, Chiara, hates being woken up by the morning noise. Raphael, the father, is a perpetually busy man. A partner in a large law firm, he lives for his work, meetings, and important clients. He comes down the stairs already in an impeccable suit, his cell phone in one hand and his briefcase in the other. His gaze quickly passes over his daughters, a distant pride, like someone observing a profitable investment. "Good morning, my little warriors," he says, placing hurried kisses on his daughters' foreheads. "Daddy has a meeting with international clients today. He'll probably arrive after you're asleep." "That's fine, Dad," replies Helena, the spokesperson for the two women. "We'll take care of everything here." Raphael smiles, oblivious to the weight of his daughter's words. For him, that precocious independence is a source of pride, not a warning sign. He believes the praise compensates for his absence. But he doesn't realize that what the girls lack isn't recognition, it's presence. "You are my greatest pride," he says, already checking messages on his cell phone. "Study hard. Be the best in the class as always." Before the girls can answer, the intercom rings. The private driver is waiting to take him to the office. Raphael waves goodbye and disappears through the door, leaving behind the expensive cologne and the familiar emptiness. The twins finish setting the table, careful not to make any noise. Their stepmother's room is at the end of the hall, and they know that Chiara is still asleep or pretending to be asleep while they get ready for school. When they have to walk down the hall, they tiptoe, holding their breath as if crossing a minefield. "Do you think she'll wake up before we leave today?" Olivia asks in a whisper as she puts the notebooks in her backpack. Helena shakes her head negatively. "She arrived late yesterday. I heard her heels clicking on the marble at 3 in the morning." The stepmother, Chiara, is a woman of intimidating beauty and calculated coldness. A former model who now moves in the capital's high society. She considers her stepdaughters a necessary inconvenience to maintain her marriage to Raphael. She rarely interacts with the girls, except to give orders or offer criticism. The doorbell rings promptly at 7:15. The school bus has arrived. The twins check once more to make sure everything is in order. Uniforms, supplies, snacks, hair. Helena keeps her small notebook in a secret bag, where she meticulously writes down all the house rules, a domestic survival manual she created herself to avoid problems. Before parting ways, the sisters hold each other's hands for a few seconds, a silent ritual symbolizing their mutual promise of protection. In that brief moment, their identical gazes meet and communicate what words cannot express. We're in this together. On their way to the elevator, they politely greet the doorman, who smiles at them both with admiration. "These girls are so responsible," he remarks to the caretaker who passes through the lobby. "So independent for their age." The comment is made with admiration, but it hides a sad truth, that independence did not stem from a progressive education or encouragement of autonomy. It was born out of necessity, absence, and survival. On their way to school, sitting side by side on the school bus, the twins watch other children get on accompanied by attentive parents who adjust their backpacks, give long goodbye kisses, and offer typical advice. Behave yourself, pay attention in class, have fun. Helena and Olivia observe these scenes as if watching a film from a parallel world, familiar, yet inaccessible. Olivia, always a dreamer, imagines what it would be like to have that kind of attention. Helena, always practical, pushes those thoughts aside and mentally reviews the tasks they need to accomplish when they return home. What no one realizes, not even the girls themselves, is that a change is about to happen in their lives. That very day, a new substitute teacher, Agnes Limon, would arrive at the school, and her experienced eyes would see beyond appearances and the rehearsed answers of the Mueller twins. The third-grade classroom was especially noisy that morning. Children ran between the desks, traded stickers, and excitedly discussed the new cartoon that had premiered over the weekend. Helena and Olivia, as always, sat together in the second row, quiet and organized, with their notebooks already open and their pencil cases lined up on the table. "They say Professor Marcia isn't coming today," whispered a boy behind them. "We'll have a substitute." Helena and Olivia exchanged glances. Replacements meant changes to their routine, and changes were rarely good in their carefully calculated lives. The door opened and a middle-aged woman entered. She had brown hair tied in a messy bun, colorful framed glasses, and a warm smile that seemed to light up the room. She wasn't tall, but her presence filled the room in a way the twins rarely witnessed. "Good morning, children. My name is Agnes Limon, and I will be your teacher for a few weeks while teacher Marcia recovers from surgery." Her voice was melodious yet firm. "Before we begin, I'd like to get to know each of you. We're going to do a different activity today." Teacher Agnes handed out colored paper and asked each student to write a letter to their future self, describing their current life, dreams, and fears. "When you're finished, I'll keep them all in a special box, and you can only open them when you're in 6th grade. The children began to write enthusiastically, but Helena hesitated, her pencil suspended above the paper. Olivia, beside her, was already scribbling dreams about being an astronaut, having a dog, and living in a treehouse. "I can't think of anything to write," Helena confessed in a whisper. Olivia smiled at her sister. "Write about how good we are at taking care of the house. How you know how to make perfect toast and how I know how to fold clothes the way Kiara likes." Helena nodded and began to write. What she didn't realize was that Professor Agnes was discreetly observing the twins' conversation, her experienced eyes noticing something peculiar in the dynamic between the sisters. As she walked between the desks, Agnes stopped behind the twins and read a few lines from Helena's letter. "I am responsible for waking my sister, making our beds, preparing breakfast, and ensuring that all the house rules are followed." Something in the practical and resigned tone of those childish words made Agnes feel a pang in her chest. 7-year-olds shouldn't be writing about household responsibilities as if they were miniature adults. During recess, while the other children ran around the playground, the twins sat on a bench away from the rest of the house. Helena took the lunchbox she had prepared that morning out of her backpack and meticulously divided the contents into equal portions. First, she checked if her sister had eaten everything. Then she drank her own water. Agnes watched the scene from afar. There was something about the dynamic between the two that deeply disturbed her. It wasn't just the typical bond between twins. It was something more intense, almost desperate, as if one depended on the other to survive. Back in the classroom, Agnes proposed a group activity. For the first time, she separated Helena and Olivia into different teams. The result was immediate and visible. Olivia became quieter, constantly looking at her sister as if seeking approval, while Helena could barely concentrate, watching her sister's movements from across the room. At the end of the class, while the children were putting away their things, Agnes noticed that Helena kept a small notebook separate from the others, an object she protected with almost obsessive zeal. "Helena, you dropped that," said Agnes, when the girl was already at the door pointing to the floor, even though there was nothing there. Instinctively, Helena felt around in the secret bag where she kept her notebook. The movement did not go unnoticed by the teacher, who smiled gently. "Sorry, my mistake." The twins left the room and Agnes sat down at her desk, lost in thought. There was something about those girls that intrigued and worried her. As a teacher for over 20 years, she had developed a sixth sense for identifying vulnerable children, and the Mueller twins set off all the alarm bells in her experienced mind. As they left school, the twins boarded the school van. The ride home was a moment of suspension, neither the freedom of school nor the pressures of home. Helena took the opportunity to mentally review the list of tasks they would need to do upon arrival, while Olivia gazed out the window, lost in fantasies that helped her cope with reality. When they arrived at the luxurious condominium where they lived, the doorman greeted them with a friendly smile. "Good afternoon, girls. Your father called to say he'll be arriving earlier today. And your stepmother left a little while ago. She looked very elegant." The news hit their little hearts like stones. Dad arriving early meant having to show them perfect homework and talk about school with forced enthusiasm. Chiara had gone to some social event, which meant she would be coming back late and probably in a bad mood. Upon entering the apartment, they were greeted by a familiar silence. The space was impeccably decorated. White sofas, contemporary artwork, Persian rugs, and design objects that seemed more like they were on display than in a house inhabited by children. "We need to clean the kitchen and tidy our room before Dad gets here," said Helena, assuming her usual role. "He'll want to see our chores." "But the new teacher didn't give us any homework today," Olivia replied, worried. "She only asked us to write that letter." A worried look crossed Helena's face. "Dad will think we're not studying enough. Let's do some extra exercises from the math book." The twins changed clothes, carefully putting their uniforms away on hangers. Helena opened her secret notebook and checked the list of daily tasks. Clean the kitchen counter, organize the living room cushions, put away Chiara's shoes, check for mail and sort it by recipient, water the ornamental plants. "I'll clean the kitchen. You take care of the plants," Helena proposed. Always efficient in distributing tasks. Olivia nodded and went to get the water sprayer. While tending to the expensive orchids that decorated the room, she let her mind wander. She imagined that each plant was a magical creature, in disguise that only she could see. In her daydreams, the orchids spoke to her, thanking her for her care and promising to protect her from unseen dangers. In the kitchen, Helena methodically cleaned every surface, double-checking to ensure that no mark or stain went unnoticed. Her movements were precise, almost robotic. Sometimes she herself forgot that she was only 7 years old. The intercom rang, startling the two girls. The doorman announced that Raphael was coming up. The girls exchanged nervous glances and hurried to put the finishing touches on the organization. When the door opened, Raphael Muller entered with the weary air of someone carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Even so, his bearing was elegant, his suit impeccable, his hair perfectly combed. He was a handsome man in his 40s, with the same hazel green eyes as his daughters. "Daddy!" they both exclaimed in unison, running to hug him in a rare display of childlike behavior. Raphael placed the briefcase on the entryway console and bent down to greet his daughters. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to step into the role of father, a role that usually took a back seat, overshadowed by his professional identity. "How was school today?" he asked, loosening his tie as he walked into the classroom. "We had a new teacher," replied Olivia, ever the talkative one. "Her name is Agnes and she wears colored glasses. She made us write letters to read when we're older." Raphael smiled distractedly as he checked messages on his cell phone. "That's interesting. And you guys, have you done your homework yet?" Olivia's smile faltered, and Helena quickly intervened. "The new teacher didn't give us any homework today because it was her first day, but we did extra math exercises on our own." The father nodded, pleased with the answer. "Those are my girls. Always responsible, always ahead." He didn't notice the look his daughters exchanged, a mixture of relief and sadness. "I'm going to take a quick shower. Chiara and I have a charity dinner tonight. Will you two be all right alone?" "Yes, Dad," Helena replied. "We've already prepared everything for dinner and for bed." Raphael smiled again, without questioning why 7-year-olds had already organized their own nighttime routine without adult supervision. In his mind, this was autonomy, precocious maturity, qualities he encouraged without realizing the emotional cost they imposed. What Raphael didn't know was that, while he was preparing for another night of absence at school, Agnes Lehman was opening the notebook Helena had forgotten during the confusion at dismissal. The small object had fallen unnoticed under a desk, and the teacher intended to return it the next day. But when she opened the first page and read the title written in neat, childlike handwriting, Rules for Surviving at Home, Agnes felt her heart clench. The contents of the following pages would confirm her suspicions and forever change the course of that family's life. Agnes couldn't sleep that night. Sitting at her small kitchen table, with a now cold cup of tea beside her, she leafed through Helena's notebook for the third time. Each page revealed a more disturbing aspect of the Muller twins' lives. No noise before 10 a.m. on weekends. Remove any fingerprints from the living room. Furniture. Never enter your stepmother's room unless you're invited. Keep Tiara's shoes by color and style. If your father asks about school, always say that everything is great. Never mention if we are hungry or tired. The list went on for pages and pages, some rules written in red pen and underlined several times, indicating greater importance or perhaps more severe consequences. What impressed Agnes most was not only the content of the rules, but the meticulous, almost obsessive organization of a 7-year-old trying to control her environment to avoid problems. Between the pages, Agnes found small drawings made by Olivia, fantasy worlds where two identical girls lived adventures in castles and enchanted forests, always together, always protected by magical creatures. It was as if art was the only escape from the oppressive reality. My God, Agnes murmured to herself, running a hand through her already disheveled hair. These girls are living in a minefield. She knew she would face resistance if she pursued the matter. The Muller family was influential in the capital. Raphael Muller was a well-known name in business and legal circles, and his wife Chiara frequented the society columns. Interfering could cost Agnes far more than her temporary job as a substitute, but she also knew she couldn't live with herself if she pretended not to have seen the signs. Those girls needed help, even if they didn't know how to ask for it. The following morning, Agnes arrived at school early and requested a meeting with the academic coordinator, Rose Allianz, an elegant and competent woman known for her discretion and good judgment. Agnes, what is so urgent that it couldn't wait until after class? Rose asked, indicating a chair in her impeccably organized office. It's about the Muller twins, Agnes replied, placing the notebook on the table. I found this yesterday after I left. I need you to read it. Rose adjusted her glasses and began to leaf through the small notebook. Her initial expression of curiosity gradually turned to concern as she flipped through the pages. When she finished, she looked at Agnes with a serious expression. This is worrying, Rose admitted. But we need to be careful. The Mullers aren't ordinary people. Raphael Muller is one of the school's main donors, and his wife Chiara is on the Parents' Council. I'm aware of that, said Agnes, but these children are clearly under some kind of abnormal pressure for their age. Look at the dark circles under their eyes, the constant scrutiny of each other, the obsession with rules. They behave like miniature adults. That's not normal, Rose. The coordinator sighed deeply. I'll schedule a meeting with the parents, but I need you to understand. We have to approach this with extreme care. We can't make accusations based solely on a notebook and observations. We need more. What do you suggest then? Agnes asked. Observe them for a few more days. Document specific behaviors. Do activities that can reveal more about the family dynamics without being intrusive. Meanwhile, I'll consult our school psychologist and review their records since they started school. Agnes nodded, not entirely satisfied, but understanding the need for caution. And the notebook? Rose returned it. For now, keep it with you. Return it to Helena discreetly, as if you had just met her. We don't want her to know we read it. Upon returning to the classroom, Agnes found the twins already seated in their places, half an hour before the start of classes. Helena seemed especially anxious, rummaging through her backpack repeatedly. Agnes realized she was looking for her notebook. Good morning, girls. Agnes greeted with a warm smile. "They are early today." "Good morning, Professor," they replied in unison, with that politeness that seemed rehearsed. Agnes approached Helena and, feigning surprise, said, "Oh, Helena, I found something I think is yours yesterday." After everyone left, she handed over the notebook, carefully closed. It was under a desk. The relief on the girl's face was immediate and intense. Her small hands gripped the notebook tightly, as if it were a life preserver. "Thank you, teacher." It's just a study diary." Agnes pretended not to notice the lie. "It's great that you keep your studies organized. It's a wonderful habit." During that day's class, Agnes proposed a special activity. Each child was to draw their family and then write 3 words describing each person drawn. The room filled with laughter and lively conversation as the children worked on their colorful drawings. Agnes circulated among the desks, observing attentively. When she reached the twins, she noticed the striking difference in their drawings. Olivia had created an elaborate scene, a giant father wearing a superhero cape, an elegant stepmother surrounded by flowers, though distant from the rest of the family, and the 2 sisters holding hands in the center. The words for the father were busy, important, and strong. For the stepmother, beautiful, elegant, and busy. For the sister, protective, friendly, and brave. For herself, and dreamy, small, and scared. The last word partially erased. Helena's drawing, on the other hand, was meticulous, almost architectural in its precision. The family was formally positioned as in an official photograph. The father in the center, the stepmother beside him, and the twins in front, identical in their dresses and expressions. The words for the father were hard-working, intelligent, and absent, the last written so lightly it was barely legible. For the stepmother, organized, demanding, and impatient. For the sister, special, fragile, and mine. For herself, responsible, caring, and invisible. Agnes felt a lump in her throat. Those drawings spoke louder than any report could express. During recess, Agnes discreetly observed the twins in the courtyard. Again, she noticed the ritual of the meticulous division of their snacks, and how Helena only ate after Olivia had finished her portion. She also noticed how Olivia seemed more relaxed and childlike when she thought no one was watching, but quickly resumed her reserved demeanor if she noticed an adult nearby. After class, once the children had left, Rose called Agnes into her office. The coordinator's expression was serious. "I reviewed the twins' school records and spoke with previous teachers," said Rose. "There are some worrying patterns that have been recorded, but never connected. Episodes of extreme tiredness, some absences justified with vague medical certificates, homework that was too perfect for children their age, and an important detail. Helena was once found cleaning the school bathroom during recess, saying she needed to practice for home. And nobody found this worrying before?" Agnes asked, incredulous. Rose sighed. "They were different teachers, at different times. And let's be honest, Agnes, we're talking about a model family in the eyes of society. Raphael Muller is considered an example of success and dedication. Chiara is seen as elegant and refined. The twins are considered prodigies for their academic performance and maturity. When you have such a strong public image, it's difficult to see the cracks." "I understand," said Agnes, "but that doesn't lessen our responsibility. What will we do now?" "I scheduled a meeting with Raphael and Chiara for tomorrow, after classes. I preferred not to mention the exact reason, only saying that we would like to discuss the girls' development." Agnes nodded. "I'll be there." "Actually," said Rose, nervously adjusting her glasses, "I think it's best if you don't participate directly. It would be more strategic if I led the meeting with our school psychologist. You're new here, a substitute, and I don't want your career to be jeopardized if things don't go as planned." Agnes opened her mouth to protest, but Rose raised her hand. "You did your part, Agnes, and you did it very well. Now let the institution take over. I promise we won't ignore the signs." Agnes left the meeting with mixed feelings. On one hand, she understood Rose's caution. On the other, she felt she was abandoning Helena and Olivia when they needed her most. That night, in her apartment, Agnes decided to do something she rarely did. She researched Raphael and Chiara Muller on the internet. Photos from social events, interviews in business magazines, and gossip columns. painted a picture of a perfect couple. The twins didn't appear in any of the photos. In a recent interview with a business magazine, Raphael spoke about his professional success. "It's all a matter of priorities and focus. Unfortunately, you can't have everything in life. I chose to build something that transcends my individual existence." Agnes closed the browser, disturbed. That man had prioritized his professional legacy over his own daughters, and Chiara seemed more like a business partner than a stepmother. The twins were merely accessories in a family arrangement that functioned only on the surface. The next day, Agnes arrived at school determined to do something, even against Rose's recommendations. She had prepared a special lesson on feelings and self-care, planning to create a safe environment where children could express difficult emotions. But upon entering the room, she immediately noticed that something was wrong. Only one of the twins was present, Olivia, sitting alone, her eyes red from crying. "Olivia, where is Helena?" asked Agnes, approaching cautiously. The girl looked up in fright. "She's sick. She had a fever last night. Chiara said she needs to rest." Agnes felt a chill. It was the first time she had seen a twin without the other. Olivia's helpless expression said everything about how vital her sister's presence was to her sense of security. "Are you all right? You look like you've been crying," said Agnes, kneeling beside the wallet. Olivia lowered her eyes. "I miss Helena. We've never been apart before." Agnes gently placed her hand on the girl's. "I'm sure she'll get better soon. In the meantime, how about being my special assistant today? I have a very important lesson about feelings, and I think you could help me." A small smile appeared on Olivia's face, and Agnes felt she had opened a tiny crack in the protective armor the twins had built around themselves. What Agnes didn't know was that, at that very moment, Helena wasn't sick at home. She was sitting in Rose Allianz's office with the rulebook open on the table, while Chiara Muller, in her elegant designer outfit, explained with a rehearsed smile how her stepdaughter's imaginative games sometimes got out of control. Rose Allianz's office was lit by a large window overlooking the schoolyard. Helena, seated in a chair that seemed too big for her small frame, kept her eyes fixed on her perfectly polished shoes. Her rulebook lay open on the desk, exposed like embarrassing evidence. "As I was explaining," Chiara continued in her melodious, controlled voice, "girls have extraordinary imaginations. Helena especially likes to create these make-believe games about rules and responsibilities." She smiled, placing an elegant hand on her stepdaughter's shoulder. "Isn't that right, dear?" Helena didn't answer immediately. Her eyes remained downcast, but her mind was racing. All her life, she had been trained to confirm the adult's version of events, to keep up appearances, to protect her sister and herself from unknown consequences. But there, in that moment, something inside her resisted. "Helena," Chiara insisted, lightly pressing her shoulder with perfectly manicured nails. The touch seemed casual to an observer, but Helena felt the pressure as a silent warning. "Yes," he murmured finally. "It's a game we invented." Rose observed the interaction with experienced eyes. In her 20 years as a school coordinator, she had learned to identify the subtle dynamics of power and intimidation. Helena's body language, the way Chiara controlled the dialogue, the way the girl avoided eye contact, everything confirmed her suspicions. "Mrs. Muller," said Rose, adjusting her glasses, "we appreciate your prompt arrival. I understand that children engage in imaginative play, but we are concerned about certain behavioral patterns we have noticed in the twins." "Like which ones?" Chiara asked, her expression perfectly composed, though her fingers drummed softly on her designer bag. Extreme tiredness, persistent dark circles under her eyes, excessively adult behavior, constant preoccupation with cleanliness and order. Rose consulted her notes. And recently Helena was found cleaning a bathroom during recess, saying she needed to practice for home. Chiara laughed, a clear sound that didn't reach her eyes. "Ah, that's it. We have a new maid, and the girls find it fun to imitate her work. You know how children are, they love playing house." Rose nodded, pretending to accept the explanation. "And what about tiredness?" The teachers noticed that the twins sometimes doze off during class. "Raphael and I have been discussing this," Chiara replied without hesitation. "Helena has been having nightmares, and Olivia, being so close to her sister, ends up sleeping poorly too." We've already consulted a child sleep specialist. Rose was worried about how easily the answers came. It was as if Chiara had a prepared script for every question. I understand. And why is Helena here today but not in the classroom? Rose asked, subtly changing the subject. As I explained when I called this morning, Helena had a fever overnight. But since we were already on our way to bring Olivia, I thought it was important to attend the meeting you requested. Afterwards, I'll take her directly to the pediatrician. Helena remained silent, her small body tense like a violin string about to break. She thought of Olivia, alone in the classroom without her protection. She wondered if her sister would be all right, if she would remember all the rules, if she would be able to keep up appearances without her. Helena, Rose said gently, would you like a drink of water, or to use the restroom while I chat a little longer with your stepmother? The girl glanced quickly at Chiara, seeking permission. It was such a subtle movement that it would go unnoticed by most people, but not by Rose. You can go, dear, Chiara said with a smile. We adults really need to talk about some boring things. Helena carefully got down from her chair and left the room, closing the door gently behind her. In the hallway, instead of going to the bathroom, she ran silently toward the third-grade classroom. She needed to see Olivia, make sure she was all right, alert her to what was happening. Inside the office, as soon as the door closed, Chiara's smile disappeared. Let's get straight to the point. Miss Allianz, what's really going on here? This sudden summons, these questions. It seems like some kind of investigation. Rose remained calm. We are simply fulfilling our educational role, Ms. Muller. The well-being of our students is our priority. And you think the well-being of my stepdaughters is at risk? Chiara's voice took on a glacial tone. I'm not making any accusations, Rose replied firmly. We are sharing professional observations and seeking to better understand the situation so we can support the girls appropriately. Chiara crossed her legs elegantly and adjusted the gold bracelet on her wrist. You know, Mrs. Allianz, I appreciate the dedication of this institution. That's why Raphael and I chose to enroll the girls here, despite other more prestigious options. And that's also why we contribute so generously to the scholarship fund and to the new library, which, if I'm not mistaken, will bear my husband's name. The veiled threat did not go unnoticed. Rose felt a chill but maintained her professional demeanor. Our concern for the students is independent of any other factor, Ms. Muller. Chiara smiled again, that calculated smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course. And believe me, no one cares more about Helena and Olivia than Raphael and I. Those girls are, she paused almost imperceptibly, part of our family. Raphael adores them, and I do everything to ensure they have a balanced and happy childhood. Meanwhile, Helena had arrived at the door of the third-grade classroom. Through the glass window, she could see teacher Agnes leading an activity. The children were sitting in a circle on the colorful rug, and Olivia was there, seemingly absorbed in the activity. Seeing her actively participating without her presence caused Helena a strange mixture of relief and helplessness. Agnes noticed movement at the door and saw Helena peeking in. With a gentle smile, she motioned for her to come in. Helena hesitated, glancing nervously down the hallway leading to Rose's office, but curiosity and the need to see her sister won out. She entered the room silently and stood near the door. Olivia, seeing her, smiled radiantly and ran to hug her. Helena, are you feeling better? Chiara said you had a fever. Helena hugged her sister tightly. I'm fine, she whispered. But we need to talk. Agnes approached the girls, observing their interaction with interest. Helena, it's so good that you could come today. We're having a special lesson about feelings. Would you like to join us? Helena looked uncertainly at the teacher. There was something in Agnes's gaze, a genuine kindness that disconcerted her. She wasn't used to adults who truly seemed to see her. I don't know if I can. Chiara is talking to the coordinator and... I understand, said Agnes. How about joining for just a few minutes while the meeting continues? We were just talking about how to express difficult emotions in a healthy way. Helena nodded shyly and followed her sister to the circle. The other children greeted her with smiles and waves, without asking about her absence or sudden return. Agnes returned to the center of the circle and continued the activity. As I was saying, children, we all feel fear, sadness, or anger sometimes. These are normal and important emotions. The problem isn't feeling these things, but rather not knowing how to express them or ask for help when we need it. Helena listened intently, sitting so close to Olivia that their shoulders touched. The idea that feeling fear or sadness was normal and not a flaw to be hidden was revolutionary to her. "Now," Agnes continued, "we're going to do an exercise. I'm going to hand out these rag dolls, and you're going to imagine that they're feeling something difficult. Think about how you would help that doll feel better." While the children were working with their dolls, Agnes discreetly approached the twins. "Helena, shouldn't you be at the meeting with your stepmother?" Helena lowered her eyes. "She said I could go to the bathroom." Agnes understood immediately. "I see. Well, I think you have a few minutes before they notice you're gone. Would you like to participate in the activity with your sister?" Helena nodded, and Agnes handed her a rag doll with a sad expression. The twins leaned over the doll, whispering to each other, creating a little story. In Rose's office, the tension was rising. Chiara impatiently checked her luxury watch. "Helena is taking a long time," he commented. "I'll go check where she is." Rose tried to buy time. "I have a few more questions before we wrap up, Mrs. Muller. For example, we've noticed that the twins seem to be taking on unusual responsibilities for children their age. Preparing their own breakfast, organizing school supplies without supervision." Chiara interrupted her with an elegant gesture. "We encourage autonomy, Mrs. Allianz. Raphael and I believe that children should learn responsibility from an early age. It's not as if we leave them alone or anything like that." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to see Helena. We have a doctor's appointment." Rose nodded, knowing she wouldn't get any more information at that moment. "Of course. But before I go, I'd like to suggest a psychopedagogical assessment for the twins. It's a standard procedure we offer to all students to optimize their development." "I'll discuss this with Raphael," Chiara replied coldly. "Now, if you'll excuse me." She left the office, her heels clicking rhythmically on the hallway floor. Rose immediately picked up the phone and called Agnes's office. In the classroom, the phone rang, interrupting the activity. Agnes answered quickly, and her expression changed when she heard Rose's message. "Helena," Agnes called urgently, "your stepmother is coming here. You should go back to the coordinator's office." Panic gripped the girl's features. She grabbed Olivia's hand, their small fingers intertwined in a desperate grip. "Everything will be all right," Olivia whispered, repeating the words Helena always told her during difficult times. Helena shook her head. Her eyes filled with a fear no child should feel. "She'll know I came to see you. She'll think I told her." "What did she tell us?" Agnes asked, kneeling beside them, her voice low and urgent. But it was too late. The door to the room opened and Chiara entered, her perfectly rehearsed smile contrasting with the rigidity of her gaze. "Helena, here you are. I was worried when I couldn't find you in the bathroom." Agnes stood up, instinctively placing herself between Chiara and the twins. "Mrs. Muller, it's so nice to meet you. I'm Agnes Limon, the substitute teacher." Helena came by to say hello to her sister. "I hope there's no problem." The look Chiara gave Helena contained a clear message that only the girl could decipher. "Of course there's no problem, but we need to go now, Helena. We have that appointment, remember?" Helena let go of Olivia's hand and walked obediently toward her stepmother. Her small body seemed to shrink even more under Chiara's shadow. "Bye, Olivia," she said, her voice almost inaudible. "See you at home." Olivia nodded, her eyes identical to her sister's, reflecting the same restrained fear. Agnes watched helplessly as Chiara led Helena out, an elegant hand firmly planted on the girl's shoulder. When the door closed, Agnes noticed that Helena had left something behind, the rag doll from the activity. Picking it up, she realized there was a folded piece of paper hidden inside the doll's clothes. Carefully unfolding it, she read the message written in shaky, childish handwriting. "The notebook is not a game. Please help." Agnes felt her heart race. That small piece of paper was more than a cry for help. It was an act of extraordinary courage from a child who had spent her entire life following rules to survive. Carefully tucking the paper into her pocket, Agnes made a decision. No matter the professional or personal consequences, she would not abandon those girls. Across the city, in his luxurious office, Raphael Müller received an unexpected call from Chiara, briefly explaining the meeting at the school. The news caught him off guard in the middle of an important negotiation. "Sort this out," he said, running a hand through the grey hair at his temples. "I can't have any distractions right now. We're closing the biggest deal of the year." What Raphael didn't know was that this simple school meeting would be the beginning of a series of events that would force him to confront what he had become. An absent father who had outsourced love, replacing presents with gifts, attention with demands for excellence. That night, the muller's apartment was immersed in a dense silence, the kind that seems to weigh you down and occupy space. Helena sat on the edge of her bed, her back straight, her hands resting on her knees like a small statue. Olivia watched her from across the room, nervously sketching in her secret notebook of fantasies. She saw the notebook, Helena whispered so softly that Olivia had to lean over to hear. Professor Agnes and the coordinator saw it. "And what happened?" Olivia asked, abandoning her drawing and crossing the room to sit next to her sister. Helena swallowed hard. "Chiara said it was a game, that we made it all up. She said we're very imaginative." The last word came out like an accusation. "Then in the car she said that if I tell anyone anything, they'll separate us. You'll go to boarding school and I'll stay here." Olivia paled. The idea of separation was both of their worst nightmares. "She can't do this, can she?" "Yes, it's possible," replied Helena, ever the realist. "I heard Chiara tell her father once that keeping the two of us together costs a lot of money, that it would be more practical if we each went to a different place." Fear hung between them like a dark cloud. For a few minutes they remained silent, holding each other's hands, a gesture that had become their only true comfort. "But I left a note," Helena finally confessed. "I hid it inside the doll in class today. I asked for help." Olivia's eyes widened, a mixture of admiration and terror. "Do you really think Professor Agnes is going to help us?" Helena didn't answer immediately. In her 7 years of life, she had already learned that adults rarely did what they promised, especially when it involved confronting other powerful adults. "I don't know," he admitted. "But she seems different. She really looks at us, you know? Like she's really seeing us, not just looking." The sound of high heels in the hallway interrupted the conversation. The two immediately separated. Helena picked up a book and Olivia returned to her drawing table. When the door opened, they were perfectly composed, as if the intimate conversation had never happened. Chiara stopped at the door, elegant in her black dress for the evening's charity dinner. Her eyes assessed the room with clinical coldness. "Have you finished your homework yet?" "Yes, Chiara," Helena replied, showing the impeccably organized notebook. "Great, we're leaving now. There's food ready in the fridge. Don't wait up." She paused, studying the girls with those calculating eyes. "And remember, what happens in our family stays in our family. Outsiders don't understand our special dynamic." The twins nodded in unison, their faces carefully neutral. Chiara seemed satisfied with the answer and closed the door as she left, the sound of her footsteps fading down the hallway. As soon as the footsteps faded, Olivia ran to the door and opened it a tiny crack, peering down the hallway. "She really did go," she whispered. "I heard the front door close." Helena jumped out of bed and went to the desk where she kept her new notebook, her emergency notebook, as she secretly called it, under a pile of school books. Since the original had been discovered at school, she had started a new one even more detailed, with information that could be important if something happened. "We need to document what happened today," she said, meticulously noting the date and events at the school, the meeting with the coordinator, and Chiara's veiled threats. Meanwhile, Olivia went to the window and observed the movement below. She saw the luxury car leaving the building's garage, taking Raphael and Chiara to yet another social event where they would be admired as the perfect couple. "They left," she confirmed. "We're alone until at least midnight." A small spark of freedom ignited in the girl's eyes. The moments when the apartment was empty were precious. They were the only times they could truly be children. "Let's make a fort in the living room," suggested Olivia, her dreamy side emerging now that they were safe from the adult's absence. Helena hesitated, torn between her usual responsibilities and the desire to play. "What if they come back early? We can't leave anything out of place." "We'll only use the sheets from our room and put everything away before 11, Olivia insisted. "Please, Helena, we need something good today." Helena couldn't resist her sister's pleading look. "Okay, but let's have dinner first and finish the rest of the homework. Then we can build the cabin." The two went to the kitchen where they heated up the meals prepared by the cook, who came 3 times a week. They ate in silence at the marble island, seated on high stools like 2 petite executives at a business lunch. Afterwards, they meticulously washed and put everything away, following the invisible rules that governed their lives. When all their obligations were over, they were finally able to build the promised cabin. Using sheets, living room chairs, and a few clothespins, they created a magical space in the middle of the minimalist room. Inside, with lanterns casting ghostly shadows on the makeshift fabric walls, Olivia told stories of magical worlds where children had superpowers and could stand up to cruel adults. And then the twin sisters discovered they could communicate telepathically. Olivia narrated, her eyes shining with excitement. When the wicked witch separated them, sending each to a different castle, they could still talk through their minds, and they began to plan their escape. Helena listened, fascinated, allowing herself for a few precious moments to believe that perhaps they too could find a magical way out of their situation. The night wore on, and promptly at 10:30, Helena remembered that they needed to take down the cabin and tidy everything up before the adults returned. The two worked in perfect sync, folding sheets, rearranging furniture, erasing any trace of their forbidden game. Back in their room, already in their pajamas and with their teeth brushed, the twins lay down on their beds, but sleep didn't come easily that night. "Helena," Olivia called from the darkness, "do you think we'll ever be like the girls in your story? Free?" Helena stared at the ceiling, where there were phosphorescent stars that her father had hung years before in a rare moment of connection. "I don't know if we'll be free like in magical stories," she answered honestly, "but I think we can have a better life than this. I don't know yet. But I'm thinking about it, always thinking." At school at that same hour, Agnes Lyman couldn't sleep. Helena's note was on her desk, illuminated by the light of the lamp. Next to it, her phone showed a recent message from Rose. "We need to be cautious. Influential family. I'm consulting our lawyer about the next steps." Agnes sensed the urgency of the situation. Her experience as an educator told her that when children finally ask for help, they have usually already endured more than they should. She decided she couldn't wait for official channels, which could take weeks to act if they acted at all. He picked up the phone and called a number he hadn't used in years. After 3 rings, a male voice answered. "Marco, it's Agnes. I need your professional help. It's about 2 of my students." Marco Ollins was a renowned child psychologist, specializing in trauma and neglect. He was also the ex-husband of Agnes, a brief marriage that ended amicably when they discovered they functioned better as professional colleagues than as a couple. "I'm listening," said Marco, his voice immediately assuming the professional tone that Agnes knew so well. For almost an hour, Agnes described in detail her observations about the Muller twins, the rulebook, the stepmother's behavior, the desperate note. Marco listened attentively, asking occasional questions, but mostly letting Agnes talk. "What you're describing," he finally said, "sounds like a classic case of emotional neglect, possibly with elements of psychological abuse. The question is, how can we help without making their situation worse?" "That's exactly what worries me," Agnes replied. "The family has influence, money, connections. If we act recklessly, they could simply transfer the girls to another school or even another city, and then we'd lose them completely." Marco reflected for a few moments. "I need to meet them, see them with my own eyes. Do you think I could convince the school to allow a professional observation?" "I can try." Rose is worried but also apprehensive. Her father is a great donor. Tell her I'll be discreet. I can go as an educational observer, interested in classroom dynamics. Nothing that would raise suspicions. "What if our suspicions are confirmed? What do we do then?" Marco's voice deepened. "Then we'll need solid evidence for an official report. Something that not even money and influence can suppress." When she hung up, Agnes felt an enormous weight on her shoulders. She was entering dangerous territory, both professionally and personally. But Helena's frightened face, the courage of that child in leaving a note asking for help, left her no choice. The following morning in the Muller's apartment, the routine began relentlessly again. The alarm clock rang at 5:30, and the twins got up in perfect synchronicity. Raphael had already left for a morning meeting, and Chiara, as always, was fast asleep in her room at the end of the hall. Helena was especially quiet while they prepared breakfast. Olivia noticed the change in her sister. "What was it?" she asked in a whisper as she placed the plates on the table. Helena looked around, making sure they were truly alone. "I've been thinking all night. We need a plan." "What kind of plan?" "A plan in case they separate us." Helena's voice trembled slightly. "If Chiara follows through on her threat to send you to boarding school, we need a way to communicate. And we need to save money. I've started saving what Dad gives us for lunch." Olivia felt a chill. The idea of separation was so painful, she could barely process it. "But what if Professor Agnes helps us?" "You left the note, remember?" Helena nodded slowly. "Yes, but we can't rely solely on that. Adults don't always keep their promises." She took her sister's hand. "But we always keep our promises to each other, don't we?" Olivia squeezed her sister's hand. "Always." The sound of a door opening interrupted the moment. Chiara appeared in the kitchen, unexpectedly awake at that hour. She was wearing a silk robe and her hair was impeccably styled, as if she had just stepped out of a salon, not bed. "Good morning, girls," she said, her tone falsely sweet. "I decided to take you to school today." "Isn't that a lovely surprise?" The twins exchanged quick, alarmed glances. Chiara never took them to school. She never got involved in morning routines. Something was wrong. "Thank you, Chiara," Helena replied automatically, while Olivia just smiled, unable to find the words. "Finish your coffee and get dressed. I've chosen special clothes for you today. They're on your beds." When Chiara left, Helena and Olivia rushed to the bedroom. On each bed was a brand new outfit, still with the tags on. Designer dresses, coordinating coats, genuine leather shoes, and matching hair accessories. Catalog outfits perfect for a happy family photo. "Why is she doing this?" Olivia whispered, touching the expensive fabric suspiciously. Helena understood immediately. "It's because of yesterday's meeting. She wants to show everyone how well we're taken care of. It's all just appearances." The two dressed in silence, helping each other with the buttons and zippers. When they finished, they looked like porcelain dolls, perfectly dressed and groomed, but with eyes that revealed a weariness far beyond their years. At school, Agnes arrived earlier than usual. She had arranged to have breakfast with Rose to discuss her conversation with Marco. She found the coordinator already in her office, organizing documents. "But good morning, Rose. Thank you for seeing me so early." Rose gestured for her to sit down. "Agnes, before you begin, I need you to know I received a call last night from Raphael Muller." Agnes felt her stomach sink. What did he want? He found out about the meeting with Chiara, obviously. He expressed concern about what he called a misunderstanding regarding his daughters. He said the girls are highly creative and tend to exaggerate domestic situations to get attention. "And you believed that?" Rose sighed deeply. "It's not about what I believe, Agnes. It's about what we can prove. And at the moment, we only have subjective observations and a notebook that could, in fact, be interpreted as a child's game." "And the note?" Helena explicitly asked for help, which can be seen as part of that same imaginative game. Rose adjusted her glasses, a gesture Agnes had already noticed her making when she was uncomfortable. Raphael also mentioned, casually of course, that he's considering where the girls will study next year. Apparently a school in Switzerland has shown interest in his prodigy daughters. Agnes paled. "He's threatening to take them out of school if we continue investigating." "Not explicitly," Rose corrected. But the message was clear. "Rose, we can't back down now. Those children are suffering. Consult Marco Ollins, a child psychologist specializing in trauma. He can help us identify more objective signs and build a solid case." Rose studied Agnes for a few moments, considering. "You've already contacted him, haven't you?" "Yes, and he is willing to help, discreetly." Before Rose could answer, her assistant rushed in. "Excuse me for interrupting, but Mrs. Muller has just arrived with the twins. She's asking to speak with you both immediately." Rose and Agnes exchanged worried glances. The move was bold. Chiara was taking the initiative, confronting them directly. It was a power game, and she was setting the rules. "Send them in," said Rose, straightening her shoulders. The door opened, and Chiara entered, leading Helena and Olivia each by the hand. The girls were impeccably dressed, like little models from a children's fashion catalogue. But Agnes noticed immediately Their eyes were dull, fearful, like frightened little animals. "Good morning," said Kiara with a radiant smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I just felt that, after our conversation yesterday, it would be good to clear a few things up. And who better to do that than the girls themselves?" Agnes felt a chill. Whatever Kiara had planned, it wouldn't be good for Helena and Olivia. And now, looking at the twins' frightened faces, she knew she had to find a way to protect them, no matter the cost. The silence in Rose's office was almost palpable. Kiara stood there, her hands resting on the twins' shoulders, a perfect smile frozen on her face. Helena and Olivia kept their eyes downcast, like soldiers awaiting orders. "Please have a seat," said Rose, indicating the chairs. "Agnes, could you call Theo to take the girls to the classroom while we talk?" "Actually," Kiara interrupted gently, "I'd like the girls to stay. They have something to say." Agnes felt her stomach sink. She looked at the twins, noticing how tense their small bodies seemed beneath the expensive new dresses. Helena, always the bravest, briefly raised her eyes, and Agnes caught a flicker of despair in them. "Girls," Kiara gently squeezed their shoulders, "tell Miss Agnes and Mrs. Rose about that prank you played. The one with the notebook." Helena hesitated, a hesitation almost imperceptible to anyone not watching closely. Olivia looked at her sister, her eyes conveying a silent message that only Helena could decipher. "It's a game we invented," Helena began, her voice small and controlled. "We pretend we're spies on a secret mission. And the notebook," Kiara encouraged. "It's our code book," Helena continued mechanically. "We invented rules to make it seem very important." Agnes watched, feeling a mixture of anger and helplessness. It was clear the girls had been rehearsed, perhaps even coerced. Rose also seemed uncomfortable, shifting in her chair as she nervously adjusted her glasses. "And what about that note you left for Professor Agnes?" Kiara asked, her voice still sweet but with an underlying rigidity. "Explain that too." Helena swallowed hard. "It was part of the game. We wanted to see if the teacher would play along." Agnes couldn't contain herself. "Helena, Olivia, you know you can tell us anything, right? Anything that's bothering you, any worries." "They're doing great," Kiara interrupted, her smile faltering slightly. "Don't you think, girls?" "Yes," they answered in unison, their voices so low they were barely audible. Rose cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Well, we appreciate you coming, Mrs. Muller, and thank you, girls, for clarifying the joke. Now perhaps you'd better go to class." "You're late." "Of course," Kiara agreed. "Girls, go to the living room. I'll be right behind you." Helena and Olivia stood obediently and walked toward the door. At the last moment, Helena turned briefly, her gaze meeting Agnes's. It was only an instant, but enough for the teacher to see the silent plea in the child's eyes. "Don't give up on us." When the door closed, Kiara's affected smile faded. "Well, I believe that clarifies everything. I hope we can put an end to this matter now." "Mrs. Muller," Agnes began, struggling to maintain her composure, "we appreciate your visit. However, our concern for the girls' well-being remains. The excessive tiredness, the anxiety. They are twins in a high-achieving family," Kiara interrupted coldly. "It's natural that they have higher expectations than other children. Raphael and I believe in excellence, in preparing them for the real world." "We understand that," Rose said diplomatically. "But children also need time to be children, to play, to rest properly." Kiara leaned forward slightly, all pretense of cordiality vanishing. "Let's be clear. Are you implying that Raphael and I don't take proper care of the girls?" "Absolutely not," Rose hurried to reply. "We just want to work together to—" "Because if that's the case," Kiara continued as if Rose hadn't spoken, "perhaps we need to reconsider whether this school still meets the twins' educational needs. Raphael and I recently received a very interesting invitation from an international institution. The threat hung in the air, heavy and explicit." Agnes felt a knot in her stomach. If the girls were taken out of school, they would lose any chance of helping them. "No one is making accusations, Ms. Muller," Rose said conciliatorily. "We are simply fulfilling our role as educators." Kiara stood up, adjusting her designer handbag on her arm. "I'm glad we're on good terms. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have commitments I can't postpone." When the door closed behind Kiara, Agnes let out an anguished sigh. "Did you see those children? They were like robots programmed to repeat a script." Rose massaged her temples, clearly stressed. "I saw. But I also saw a woman willing to do anything to keep up appearances. If we push any harder, she'll simply take them away, and then what will we do? So we just ignore everything? We pretend everything is fine while those children wither away emotionally? I didn't say that, Rose replied firmly. I said we need to be strategic. You mentioned this psychologist, your friend Marco. I think we should pursue this idea, but with extreme discretion. Agnes nodded, a plan beginning to form in her mind. I'll contact him immediately. In the meantime, I need to get back to the room. The girls must be waiting. In the classroom, Helena and Olivia sat in their usual places, stiff in their new dresses, while the other children worked animatedly on a collage activity. Agnes entered, trying to maintain her composure, but her heart tightened at the sight of the twins' tense faces. Children, continue. With the activity, she instructed. I'm going to go around the tables to see how you're doing. She walked across the room, stopping at several desks before casually approaching the twins. She crouched down between them, pretending to observe their work. Everything's all right, she whispered, making sure no other child could hear. I received your note, Helena. I haven't given up on you. Helena didn't answer, but Agnes noticed the almost imperceptible relaxation of her shoulders. Olivia risked a brief glance at the teacher, her eyes conveying a silent gratitude. We'll find a way, Agnes continued in a low voice. Trust me. Throughout the rest of the day, Agnes kept the twins under discreet observation. She noticed how Helena ate little during snack time, meticulously saving some of her food in a napkin, which she then placed in her backpack. She observed how Olivia seemed quieter than usual, her eyes constantly searching for her sister. And she noticed, with growing concern, the physical signs of stress, the deep dark circles under her eyes, the constant tension in her small shoulders, the startle at the slightest unexpected sound. Late in the afternoon, as the children were packing up their things to leave, Agnes received a text message from Marco. Confirmed for tomorrow. I'll be introducing myself as an educational consultant. Meanwhile, in the Muller's penthouse, Chiara entered Raphael's office, where he was working intently on his laptop. He barely looked up when she settled into the armchair opposite him. How was school? He asked distractedly, still typing. Exactly as expected, Chiara replied, taking off her high heels. That substitute teacher, Agnes something or other, is causing problems, but the coordinator got the message when I mentioned the school in Switzerland. Raphael finally looked at his wife. Do you really think this is necessary? Changing the girls' schools seems drastic. It's just a possibility, Chiara said softly. A plan B, but I don't think we'll get to that. Rose Alliance is too smart to risk the school's reputation because of a substitute's theories. Raphael nodded, turning his attention back to his work. Chiara watched her husband for a few moments, his face a mask of calculated calm. Oh, and we need to attend the twins' ballet recital next week, she added casually. It's been on our calendar for months, Raphael frowned. Ballet? Since when do they do ballet? Since the beginning of the year, Raphael, Chiara replied with controlled impatience. You signed the authorization. Olivia has shown special talent, according to the instructor. The confusion on Raphael's face was quickly replaced by guilt. He had no idea that his daughters practiced ballet. He had probably signed the authorization among dozens of other documents that Chiara regularly presented to him. Of course I'll be there, he promised, making a mental note. Without fail. What Raphael didn't know, and Chiara would never admit, was that the twins didn't do ballet. They never had. It was just another of the elaborate lies Chiara created to maintain the facade of the perfect family while manipulating everyone around her. When Raphael turned his attention back to his work, Chiara smiled discreetly. The feeling of control over the narratives of her life was something she cultivated meticulously. Her stepdaughters were pieces on a chessboard, useful when convenient, disposable when necessary. What Chiara didn't notice, engrossed in her own schemes, was the silent figure in the hallway. Helena stood by the half-open office door, listening to every word. Her small face, usually so composed, now displayed a mixture of fear and determination. Silently, she returned to the room she shared with her sister. Olivia, she whispered as she entered, finding her twin sitting on the bed drawing. We need to do something. Chiara is lying to her father about a ballet recital that doesn't exist. Olivia dropped her pencil, confused. Ballet? But we never... Exactly, Helena interrupted. She's planning something, maybe that's what she meant by separating us. The two remained silent for a moment, the weight of the situation falling on their small shoulders. Finally, Olivia spoke, her voice trembling slightly. What are we going to do? Helena sat down next to her sister, taking her hand. Remember what Professor Agnes said today? That she hasn't given up on us? I think we need to trust her. And we need to gather evidence. What kind of evidence? Everything. My notebook, the notes Kiara leaves, the voicemails, anything that shows how things really are. Olivia nodded slowly, squeezing her sister's hand. I'm scared, Helena. Me too, Helena admitted, perhaps showing vulnerability for the first time. But I'm more afraid of what might happen if we do nothing. The following morning, the tension was palpable in the teacher's lounge. Agnes had arrived early to meet Marco, who was waiting in one of the meeting rooms. Rose was with them, nervously going over the plan. You will be introduced as Dr. Marco Ollins, an educational consultant specializing in child development, Rose explained. You are here to observe innovative teaching practices for a comparative study among elite schools. Marco nodded, adjusting his tie. Tall and calm, with dark-rimmed glasses and graying hair at the temples, he exuded professional authority. Understood. I will observe discreetly, without interacting directly with the Muller twins unless absolutely necessary. And what if it becomes necessary? Agnes asked. Then I will be extremely careful, Marco replied. I have 20 years of experience working with traumatized children. I know how to create a safe space without putting pressure on them. Rose checked her watch. Classes start in 15 minutes. Agnes, you should go to your classroom. Marco, I'll take you after the children are settled in. I'll introduce you to the whole class, so it won't seem like we're focusing on the twins. Agnes picked up her briefcase and headed for the door, but Marco gently stopped her. Agnes, he said softly, I know you're emotionally involved in this case. That's natural, considering what you've observed, but I need you to remain calm today. Sensitive children like the twins will pick up on any excessive tension. Agnes nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her ex-husband's words. I'll do my best. But Marco, those girls are suffering. Every day that passes, I know, he interrupted gently, and we will help them, but we have to do it right. One wrong step, and we could lose the chance to really make a difference in their lives. With a final wave, Agnes left the room. In the hallway, she passed several children arriving for class, greeting them with a smile that hid her anxiety. When she reached the door of her classroom, she saw Helena and Olivia already seated in their places, as always well before the scheduled time. Good morning. Girls, he greeted, trying to keep his voice natural. Good morning. Professor Agnes, they replied in unison, with that almost supernatural synchronicity they possessed. Agnes approached their desks, pretending to organize some papers. Today we'll have a visitor in our classroom, an educator who came to observe our lesson. Don't worry, it will just be a normal observation. Helena looked directly at Agnes, her eyes conveying an understanding beyond her years. He's coming for our sake, isn't he? Agnes hesitated, surprised by the girl's insight. He comes to observe the whole class, she replied carefully. But yes, he can help with that situation we talked about. Olivia, who looked particularly pale that morning, leaned forward slightly. Chiara said she's going to take us on a trip. After the ballet recital that doesn't exist. Agnes felt a chill. When? Next week, Helena replied, her voice almost inaudible. She's lying to her father. She said we have a ballet recital, but we've never had classes. The information was alarming. Agnes struggled to maintain her composure. I understand. Thank you for telling me. Let's get to work quickly then. Before they could continue their conversation, other students began to enter the room, and Agnes had to return to her desk. Throughout the morning, while conducting the activities, her mind raced. If Kiara truly planned to take the twins out of the city, perhaps even the country, time was running out quickly. Around recess time, Rose entered the room accompanied by Marco. The children immediately silenced their conversations, curious about the visitor. Good morning, class, Rose said with a smile. This is Dr. Marco Ollins, an education specialist who is visiting several schools for a research project. He will only be observing your class today, so please continue with your work as usual. Marco greeted the class with a gentle nod and took a discreet seat at the back of the room. His experienced eyes immediately located the twins, noticing their rigid posture, the way they sat perfectly aligned, as if they were afraid of taking up too much space. During the next activity, a group dynamic on problem-solving, Marco observed how Helena naturally assumed the role of protecting Olivia, always positioning herself slightly ahead of her sister, like a shield. He noticed how Olivia rarely spoke without first looking at Helena, seeking approval, and he mentally registered the physical signs, the dark circles under her eyes, the pronounced thinness, the constant tension in their small bodies. During recess, while the other children ran to the playground, the twins remained in their places, meticulously organizing their materials before leaving. Marco casually approached Agnes, who was supervising the students' departure. "Do they always fall behind like this?" he asked quietly. Agnes nodded. "Always the last to leave, the first to return, as if they needed this controlled space." Marco made a mental note. "I'll observe them discreetly in the courtyard. Continue with your normal routine." In the schoolyard, the twins sat on a bench away from the others, as they always did. Helena took the carefully prepared lunchbox out of her backpack and divided the contents with surgical precision. Marco, pretending to supervise all the children, strategically positioned himself to observe them, without being obvious. He noticed how Helena checked her watch several times, how she constantly monitored her surroundings, and how she only ate after Olivia finished. When the bell rang, signaling the end of recess, Marco had already seen enough to confirm his initial suspicions. Back in the teacher's lounge during the children's lunch break, he shared his observations with Agnes and Rose. "What we are seeing is consistent with a pattern of chronic emotional neglect," he explained gravely. "The twins have developed a codependent survival system. Helena has assumed the role of protector, of pseudo-mother, while Olivia is emotionally dependent on her sister for basic social navigation." "And what about that rule book?" Agnes asked. "A classic coping mechanism. Children in unpredictable environments often create rigid systems to gain some sense of control. It's like psychological armor." Rose nervously adjusted her glasses. "And what about this supposed trip Kiara is planning?" Marco frowned. "That's worrying. It could be a reaction to the perception that they are being watched. If she suspects we are investigating the situation, she might try to remove the girls from the reach of the authorities. So we need to act fast," Agnes concluded. "But how? We don't have concrete proof of physical abuse, only indications of emotional neglect." Marco reflected for a moment. "We need more. Testimonies from the girls themselves, documentary evidence of their daily lives at home, anything to support an official intervention." "The girls mentioned a secret emergency notebook," Agnes recalled, "and they talked about notes and voicemails that Kiara leaves behind. If we could get access to that." "That would be an invasion of privacy," Rose warned. "We need to follow the appropriate channels." "And what would those channels be when we're dealing with a powerful and influential family?" Agnes asked, frustration tinging her voice. "How long would an official process take? Days, weeks? The girls may not have that time." Marco raised his hand, diffusing the situation. "There's a middle ground. I can request an official psychological evaluation of the twins as part of standard school protocol. This would give me the opportunity to speak with them in a safe environment, professionally document my observations and, if necessary, initiate an investigation through appropriate channels." Rose seemed relieved by the suggestion. "This could work. We could present it as part of a program for all the children in the class. Not just the twins, but Kiara would never agree," Agnes objected. "We don't need her permission if we present it as part of standard school protocol," Rose explained. "All parents sign a general authorization at the beginning of the year for educational assessments." "And Raphael?" asked Agnes. "From what you've described, he's largely absent and delegates these matters to Kiara. He probably won't even know about the evaluation until it's completed," Marco replied. A plan was beginning to take shape, a faint line of hope. But while the adults discussed strategies, at the Muller's house, Kiara made an important call, her soft voice concealing the cold, calculating nature of her intentions. "Yes. Confirm the tickets for 3 people. Yes, one way only. No return date." She paused, observing her perfectly manicured nails. "And please maintain absolute discretion on this matter." Kiara's plan was in motion. an invisible timer ticking against the time remaining to save the Muller twins. The following morning began with a palpable tension in the air. At school, Marco had prepared everything for the twins' psychological evaluation, disguised as part of an educational program for the whole class. Agnes watched the clock anxiously, counting down the minutes until the girls arrived. But 7:30 passed, and the twins' chairs remained empty. They never failed to arrive. Agnes murmured to Rose, who was passing through the living room door. "Never?" At 8:15, Rose re-entered the room, her face pale. The school transport informed us that no one answered when they arrived at the girls' building. The doorman said that Chiara left with them earlier in a taxi. Agnes felt her blood run cold. "She's moved the plan forward. We have to warn Marco." Meanwhile, Raphael Muller was in an important meeting when his cell phone vibrated insistently. Irritated by the interruption, he finally answered when he saw it was the third call from an unknown number. "Mr. Muller? This is Agnes Lyman, your daughter's teacher. Has something happened to my daughters?" he asked, suddenly alert. "They didn't come to school today, and we have reason to believe they are in danger." "What are you talking about?" "They're at home with Chiara." "Mr. Muller," Agnes's voice was firm despite her nervousness, "we need you to come to the school immediately. There are things about your daughter's routine that you need to know." At the international airport, Chiara held the twins' hands tightly as they walked through the terminal. Helena and Olivia, dressed in identical outfits that weren't their usual uniforms, looked confused and frightened. "Remember what we talked about," Chiara said with a forced smile as she saw a security guard looking in her direction. "We're going to visit Grandma who's sick. You're excited, aren't you?" The twins nodded mechanically, fear evident in their eyes. Helena squeezed Olivia's hand, her secret code for "stay calm, I'm here." "We need to go to the bathroom," Helena said suddenly. Chiara hesitated, glancing at her watch. "There's no time." "Please," Olivia insisted, her voice trembling. "I have a stomachache." With an irritated sigh, Chiara led them to the nearest women's restroom. "Hurry up, our flight leaves in 40 minutes. In the bathroom, Helena locked herself in a stall with Olivia and quickly pulled the small cell phone she had hidden from her sock, the emergency phone that Agnes had discreetly placed in her backpack the day before they realized they wouldn't have time for the original plan. With trembling fingers, Helena typed the only message she could think of: "Airport stepmother, help." At school, Marco, Agnes and Raphael were gathered together when Agnes's cell phone vibrated. She read the message and her face paled. "They're at the airport," he announced, showing the screen to the others. Raphael seemed confused. "That doesn't make sense. We don't have any trips planned." "The tickets are one-way only," Marco explained, based on the information they had. "Mr. Muller, we believe your wife is trying to take your daughters out of the country." The lawyer was finally beginning to understand the gravity of the situation. "Let's go there now." At the airport, Chiara was impatiently banging on the bathroom door. "Girls, that's enough. Get out now." Helena hid her cell phone again and opened the door. "Sorry, Olivia wasn't feeling well. It doesn't matter. Let's go." As they walked toward the boarding gate, Helena noticed police officers patrolling the terminal. Her heart raced. Had the message been received? "Passengers on Flight 372 to Zurich. Please proceed to Gate 15 for boarding." "It's ours," said Chiara, hurrying the girls along. In the boarding line, Chiara smiled triumphantly as she handed her passports and tickets to the employee. Helena stood upright, holding her sister's hand tightly, trying to ignore the growing pain in her legs that had lasted for weeks, pains that Chiara insisted were nonsense and drama. That's when they heard a familiar voice. "Chiara." Raphael Muller was running through the terminal, accompanied by police officers, with Marco and Agnes close behind. The airline employee stopped the boarding process, confused by the situation. "Daddy!" Olivia cried, tears streaming down her face. "What does this mean?" demanded Chiara, her face a mixture of anger and panic. Raphael ignored his wife and knelt before his daughters. For the first time in years he truly saw them, their pale faces, tired eyes, frail bodies. "Are you all right? Did someone hurt you?" Helena, always the protector, the guardian of the rules, felt something inside her break. "We've had leg pain for weeks. Chiara says it's just being fussy, but it hurts a lot. And we're hungry, Dad. She goes out and leaves us alone all the time." The police had already separated Chiara from the girls. While she shouted about her rights and threatened to sue everyone, Marco approached, formally introducing himself to Raphael. "Mr. Muller, I'm a child psychologist. We need to take your daughters for an immediate medical examination." 3 hours later, at the hospital, the initial diagnosis confirmed the most serious suspicions: moderate malnutrition, vitamin deficiency, and signs of chronic stress. The leg pain, the doctor explained, was likely the result of poor nutrition combined with excessive physical exertion. Raphael, sitting in the hallway with his face in his hands, looked as if he had aged 10 years in a day. Agnes and Marco waited patiently beside him. "How could I not have noticed?" he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. "How could I have been so blind?" "You saw what you wanted to see," Agnes replied gently. "Independent, well-behaved, responsible children. But you didn't see the price they paid for it." Raphael lifted his face, which was stained with tears. "What do I do now?" Marco leaned in, his voice firm but compassionate. "First, you need to be truly present, not just physically but emotionally. Your daughters need a father, not an absent provider." "And what about Chiara?" "She will face criminal charges," replied a police officer who approached. "We have sufficient evidence to characterize negligence and psychological abuse, and we are investigating the possibility of international child trafficking." That night, when the twins were finally released to go home, Raphael took them to a hotel. The house where they lived held too many painful memories for a first night of starting over. In the hotel room, he sat on the edge of the bed where the girls were lying together, as they always did. "I want you to know that from now on, everything will be different," he promised. "I'm going to take a leave of absence from work. We're going to find a new house, and you'll never have to take care of yourselves or each other like this again." Olivia, ever the dreamer, asked hopefully, "Can we have a dog?" Raphael smiled through tears. "Of course." Helena, always practical, hesitated before asking, "What if you get busy again?" Raphael took his daughter's small hands in his own. "So tell me, remind me, because nothing, absolutely nothing in this world is more important than you two." That night marked the beginning of a difficult journey of healing and rebuilding for the Muller family. The traumas wouldn't disappear overnight, and the road ahead would be long. But the twins now had something they had lacked for a long time: the certainty that they no longer needed to be adults in children's bodies. Agnes and Marco remained present in their lives, first as professional support, then as family friends, and slowly, day by day, Helena and Olivia relearned to simply be what they were: 7-year-old children entitled to protection, care, and unconditional love. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope this story about Helena and Olivia has touched your hearts. 2 girls who, through each other's courage and the help of adults who truly cared, managed to transform their reality. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring you new narratives that explore the complexities of life, pain, and hope. Don't miss our upcoming content, and leave a comment telling us which stories you'd like to hear. We look forward to reading your thoughts and feelings about the Muller twins' journey.